Welcome to One of My Podcasting. I'm KLP. We're going to talk about breakups, and we're going to talk about who gets more upset when people are broken up and what hurts people in relationships. So here's what we got in a couple stories from here. One I'm going to take from Inside Hook. Breakups hit men harder than women. Contrary to common gender stereotypes, men may have a harder time dealing with heartbreak than women. Because you all have to think about the fact that there's a lot of talk about how, men, they don't really talk about their feelings after a relationship or during, because it's not a manly thing to do. You got to just keep it in and just take it like a man and all that kind of stuff. It still might be cliche, but it's still very much true. But also men have been, because the fact that we might not have as many fathers taking care of, their sons, or they're kind of neglected because of the fact that there's a breakup in the family or some kind of a divorce or any kind of separation. That also changes things up. Then the guys, these young men that grow up to be, young boys growing up to be men, they start, learning from their mothers and maybe from their sisters that, you should be opening up for your feelings. A little more femininity comes into play because there's not that male role model to come in and say, no, be strong, be brave, And there's certain things you just not let affect you, but that's like the thoughts of open up about your feelings more. Of course, women want to make a guy feel more about talking about their feelings when it's really not something that we should necessarily do. It's probably still better off. I mean, still, sometimes if there's things we got to really get off our chests, that's one thing, but not a regular ongoing thing. We have to be emotional. We have to express our emotions on a regular basis. I don't think that's a good, healthy thing for guys anyway, because we need to be able to overcome. And, we're not built the same way as women in terms of emotions, in terms of the biological makeup. There's a way where we're supposed to go and be able to go. That's not a matter of not feeling the emotions, but that we should be able to go and let them slide off. We can't just hold on to feelings and just let it be something where we're victims or that we're being held back for whatever reason. We can't have that. And that's where I think the story really comes in. There's a study that was published by the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships examining the outcome of hardships romantically by analyzing responses from 184,000 volunteers who opened up about their relationship problems in an anonymous survey. They were looking to mine responses from recurring psychological themes to build a map of common relationship woes. So there were common patterns: communication, trust and time investment. There were relationship stressors. And then they also examined by gender, and some challenges to preconceived gender stereotypes emerge. Researchers found that the talk of heartache, regret, and tears after a breakup was surprisingly pronounced among men, occurring significantly more among male respondents than female ones. But it's an anonymous survey, so keep that in mind. It's not like you're going to have a bunch of guys having to go look for therapists to go and talk about their feelings. Okay? So one of the lead authors says, quote, "The fact that the heartache theme was more commonly discussed by men emphasizes how men are at least emotionally affected by relationship problems as women." Well, that's true, but we don't express it as much. And that's what we have to do. That's what's probably better off that we do that way. Thanks to the idea that men are unwaveringly stoic and unemotional, many men have less experience processing negative emotions in a healthy way. May also feel less willing to reach out to emotional support networks. But because what happens is with all that chip on our shoulder, with the things that happen to us, it makes us stronger. Okay? Because of things like this, we are strengthened by it. We motivate ourselves after the fact. We try to do better. These are the kind of things that work out very well for, guys. That should happen. Now, Kelly Kipp mentions that this dated gender mentality is unfortunate at best and often turns toxic. So recently dumped men, please, for the good of society, let this be an invitation to you all to break out the Ben and Jerry's and embrace your inner sad boy next time you get dumped. No. She says it'll be fun, I promise. No. Absolutely not. What you do is fuel the energy out of what happens from those breakups. That's really what you got to be able to do. I mean, maybe some guys can't do it, and that's okay. But, if you have a friend of yours, guys, if you got a friend of yours, his best bud or whatever, that kind of gets into that, you want to be able to go and do the right by him. And, not necessarily need to be there to help cope, but, get his mind off of it. Distract. It's one thing I do very well, which I don't think women really do as much. But for me, I like to distract myself. I like to focus on other things because it makes me happier. Getting my mind off of it makes me happier than it does talking about it. I mean, there are some girls that I talk to that absolutely wished that I would go ahead and open up my feelings about why I'm single. That's the other thing. Because I'll be single for all this time. 40, again, in my mid-40s, single, no kids, never married. And there are women that will ask the question, why? And there's some that might be actually interested in me and say, man, but, that shouldn't be happening to you. But when I've talked about why, the one thing I've learned from talking about it or talking it out over my head is realizing in all these years how it really made me who I am. That I took all those issues and said to myself, I don't need to be worried so much about why this hurts me, is that there's a reason for it. That's what it comes down to. Because the other thing, the breakups also are because from some women that, you might have heard toxic from Kelly Kidd, but what about the women being toxic to being in the relationship? Being toxic as the toxic portion of the relationship that becomes the hurt of the man. If a woman is cheating, if a woman is just, kind of playing the field and going after somebody else. I mean, it's always a thought that the man does it, but no, how about the woman? Do we even consider that at all? Or we don't? Thought process. Another story that came in is from Psychological Post. Also in the same kind of vein about, being upset and being frustrated about certain things when it comes to breakups. But in a relationship, women get more upset, they're saying, when deceived about men's work, while men get more upset when deceived about women's looks. So in this, there were 2 studies published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior. Men and women differ in the degree to which they become upset by opposite sex deception and online dating. See, everybody has their reasons of how they handle things. And this is why I brought this story up here, because of how men handle their feelings, men handle breakups. The fact that a study said that men are more affected by breakups, yeah, that's true. I believe that. But the way that men handle relationship breakups is a different story. That's the other part. So with this said, the studies indicate that men more so than women search for youth and physical attractiveness in their potential mates. Evolutionary theory argues that female attractiveness serves as a cue of reproductive capacity, and identifying attractive women would have been of reproductive importance for ancestral males since the beginning of time. Relatedly, research suggests that women more so than men prefer partners of higher social status, resources, and ability to provide. In ancestral environments, female productive success would have been constrained by access to resources. It really still comes down to the fact that men marry for beauty and attractiveness, for youth and beauty, and women for support emotionally, physically, and sometimes financially. Stability. It does work that way. You might think it's old-fashioned, but look, the psychologists even tell you the same thing. And the differences manifest in the ways men and women deceive each other. When attempting to impress the potential males, men are more likely to deceive women about their levels of dominance, masculinity, and resources, income, career expectations, while women are more likely to try to deceive men about their physical appearances. In online dating contexts, deception can be particularly difficult to detect. A total of 644 undergraduate students were recruited for both studies, providing demographic information, completing a questionnaire assessing for past sexual behavior, attitudes towards uncommitted sex, and desire for uncommitted sex. Another study did the same thing, similar, and they went through all the different issues about that. But like I said, it's pretty clear where guys are more interested in things, because then what happens is if we're looking for youth and beauty, there is plenty. Because it takes a while for us to get invested to a woman, their heart, and who they are, and the real value of who they are outside of that, what's on the inside. It'll take a while for us to learn about that. But then when we go through it, we're saying to ourselves, okay, for women, when they feel like they've found someone they can invest in just because of all the things they bring to the table, then that's why they're more concerned about, the fact that it's hard for them to find men of that status, of a certain social status, a certain financial status. So they're narrowing their possibilities to a smaller margin. Meanwhile, guys are doing less than that because there's more women that are beautiful and young than there are guys that are necessarily, at the level. And I'm not talking about there's guys that are not necessarily at the level, but you're looking for somebody that is got to be somewhat attractive so that they feel like, it matches for them. Plus successful. And successful means over $100,000 a year, where there's not that many guys that do that. Yours truly included. So these are the kind of things that are considered. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Food for thought. Anyway, I'll talk to you next time.